So exciting to have with us today Sharon Price John, CEO of Build-A-Bear. Sharon, welcome.
Hey, George, so good to see you.
Sharon, so great to see you, and always great to have a conversation with you, especially since I understand how well-versed you are in leadership. Sharon, can we start by letting our global audience know a little bit about yourself as well as your professional journey?
Yeah, I'll keep that short, but I've been through quite a few changes, known to some degree as a change agent with different companies, brands, business units, mostly in the toy industry, from Hasbro to Mattel, including some fashion and footwear with Wolverine Worldwide, where I learned about specialty retail and um, 7 years ago was offered the opportunity to lead this beloved iconic brand Build-A-Bear into a turnaround situation, and here we are. So it seemed like the perfect fit, the mashup between toys and retail, and we've had quite a run for the last 7 years, but not without struggles. There've been some tough times in there. We've managed this through what would be known as, basically, some call it the apocalypse, which I do not do. I just call it tremendous change of retail in terms of how consumers want to behave and shop and engage with brands. And now, also the Brexit led our business through that, and now here we are with yet another challenge, and this one not just sector based and not just geographically based like Brexit, but global. Global. Everyone is impacted by this pandemic.
Well, you're the CEO of an incredible company, and you started as CEO back in 2013. Could you tell us, taking us back to that time, tell us a little bit about what your first day was like?
It was a lot of fun. Build-A-Bear's offices are fun, as they should be. They're full of furry friends and happy people, and but at the same time, it was necessary for us to establish a platform for change for the company. And this was not the type of organization where everything that was happening was wrong. There was a lot that was right, particularly as it relates to the culture of Build-A-Bear. Very special culture. Our mission statement is to add a little more heart to life. It's a very warm and friendly and family-driven, collaborative environment that has a lot of assets in its wheelhouse. But at the end of the day, because of so much that had changed, starting with the economic shift of 2008, and the company had been slow to make some of those business model changes that needed to happen. They had experienced some challenges on growth and particularly profitability for the last 7 to 8 years. And my job was to come in and change that portion of the company. We did return to profitability fairly quickly, and we stabilized the organization and started shifting the company to be more focused on its core value, which we believe is the innate equity of the brand, not just as to retail and wonderful experience that you have at Build-A-Bear. And just for some of the viewers, George, I know you know what goes on at Build-A-Bear, but this emotional connection is created when people come to Build-A-Bear and pick their own furry friend and make it with the stuffing station and put the heart in and go through the ceremony. So that's where a lot of our value lies. And we felt that if we could reorganize the company and focus more on extracting and monetizing that brand equity and different revenue streams beyond particularly mall-based retail, that would be a much more stable and diversified model. So we've launched an outbound licensing program. We're in the midst of some entertainment deals. We have diversified our retail footprint beyond traditional malls. So there's some examples. We've also recently signed franchises in both China and India. So it's a much more as I said, diversified company now that believes that its core value is about the relationship that we have with consumers.
What is one thing that our global audience should know about you?
Since it's a global audience, my major at Columbia for my master's in business administration was international business. So how about that? There.
That's
Yeah.
really, really awesome. So, and then what is one thing folks should know about Build-A-Bear across the planet? What is that one thing? What is the one thing?
Well, I did share the one thing, which is that our mission statement. But one thing that we also get to say about Build-A-Bear is that the sun never sets on Build-A-Bear. With our relationship with China, somewhere around the world, you can get a furry friend almost any time of the day.
I love it. I love it. The sun never sets on Build-A-Bear. That is a key takeaway today. So, given on a sobering note, given the current global situation that we're all collectively experiencing, how are you and your colleagues weathering this situation? And most importantly, how are you utilizing innovation and technology to help with keeping some semblance of business as usual?
I have to start this with saying that whatever I'm experiencing or my colleagues are experiencing, it pales in comparison to what some people are sadly having to go through with this pandemic and the way people are being impacted just on a very personal level, from those who are infected to those who are on the front line. So as much as we are challenged without a doubt, and that we have had substantial negative impact on our revenue, and we are working through that. For the most part, we are all healthy, and we are not on the front line. So I want to just extend my appreciation to all those that are, and extend my sympathies to those that are personally and negatively impacted. But beyond that, we're in fairly good spirits. It's not as if Build-A-Bear, as I noted earlier in the lead-in, has not experienced just challenges. We tend to rise to challenges. We're a very resilient company. We're a very nimble leadership team and a very flexible organization. And you have to be in this environment, and not just this environment, but the environment that we were living in for the previous 5 to 7 years. Very tumultuous, a lot of changes, a lot of impacts coming from a number of different avenues, and you have to be willing to evolve quickly to respond to those. So we look at this once you get over the initial shock, and that you are coming together tightly as a team, working together on a daily basis in crisis mode. There is that moment where you really are focused on what's right in front of you, recognizing that the changes are happening at a very, very rapid pace. We set up a emergency task force and implemented a number of different provisions, from cash preservation to daily meetings with the leadership team, including weekends. Literally shut down our entire fleet in a matter of hours. Nothing any retailer has really ever trained to do. And from that, we then had subsequent decisions, very difficult decisions that had to be made, that we needed to execute with excellence, because it involves people and people's livelihoods, which is never an easy task. But we had to get into survival mode. Build-A-Bear was in a fortunate situation to have been at the height of its cash, just based on where the year was, and that we have no borrowings on our credit facility. So we were in a fortunate position to be able to weather the storm. But no company can successfully operate in an unlimited amount of time with 90% of its revenue turned off, which is what happened with our stores. So we also very, very quickly transitioned into a work from home scenario, a necessity. Of course, we already had a lot of the technology to do that, and some of our teams had already started to use this type of technology on a very regular basis. But in almost in a matter of hours, in almost an overnight situation, we were able to start operating effectively, in some cases even more efficiently, in a virtual environment. And given many kudos to our IT team, but also to the willingness of the organization to embrace this quickly, and start moving the business and company forward to the best degree that we could under the circumstances. So, it's been a fascinating journey. I will say that I believe we are now out of the immediate crisis mode, although there are still edges to it. And we are slowly starting to reopen our stores with a lot of different changes, new training for our associates, new PPE, social distancing, signage for guests, trying to keep everyone safe, and slowly rolling that out across the country where it makes sense. On the internet side, of course, like a lot of different companies have really, really ramped up, and we used, if you can, not the best term, but use the crisis to drive some innovation that we've been needing to do for a long time, including creating a virtual waiting room for some of our hottest products, and putting in new capabilities for buy online, ship to store. So when our stores start to reopen, we can have our associates work on fulfilling some of this increased demand. We also created entirely new fulfillment lines in our warehouse to deliver some of the demand. So a lot of fresh thought and innovation in the midst of this that is going to benefit for years to come. So I'm quite proud of the team for being able to do that.
Sharon, that is, what's really striking about what you just described is the fact that you seem to have been somewhat prepared, at least from a logistical operations standpoint, as best you could to weather what was obviously unexpected for the entire planet. And so how you've adapted is really also striking in a very positive way in terms of your leadership style. And I think it's evident in the way you described your caring and your approach to your employees, and the same caring and approach to keeping your customers safe, and yet at the same time making sure that that supply chain remains intact so that you can actually deliver what are many times, just incredibly hopeful products, not only for children, but for adults, the whole family, right? So you're spreading that sunshine through your product lines to help individuals and families really across the planet. So I think it's amazing for me personally and professionally to hear your leadership style, which I think is admirable, and I think should be emulated by anyone who's wondering, how do I lead? I think
George, we've talked about this before on the importance of teddy bears. It seems, of course, I get it, and then I understand that we're quote unquote non-essential. I get that, but at the end of the day,
right, exactly, right.
Sometimes all you need is there is.
There is, and after all, the sun never sets on your company and your leadership, and that's what's really remarkable, I think, from so many different angles. With all of this accelerated pace, so we were in a time, you and I had a conversation in January, pre-pandemic. We knew there was something happening overseas, but no one was really sure what and how and if it would ever expand to the point that some suggested it could. And we were looking at the 10-year span to achieving the global goals of the UN, those 17 broad goals. In fact, you had just spoken at the UN last November. It's remarkable to think that some 3,500 odd some days to achieving the goals by 2030, boom, we have this global situation where for the first time in history, the entire planet is experiencing the same thing, right? I mean, it's unprecedented. The same experience where everyone's in lockdown, everyone had to, and is still in many cases still in a stay-at-home situation, et cetera. With this accelerated pace, are there any examples of areas within your company where, but for what happened, this acceleration made it possible to do things that you wouldn't have expected?
Oh, without a doubt. I believe that the to a more undeniably a part of our future. And this has completely accelerated our capabilities to do that. And it is likely that we will pop out on the other side of this with looking much differently in the way we expect people to engage and operate, and how we use our headquarters versus allowing people to have more flexible schedules. And I think that was already being driven by a lot of the our millennial workers, and that this has put us in a much more engaged and appropriate space for the capabilities to be more flexible. And I like that, particularly since we're a creative and collaborative company. There are some aspects of our company where you do need to be face-to-face, just like with everyone else, particularly some of the development and design pieces. But I'm glad that we've excelled on that capability. It's also shown a very bright light on the enormous opportunity that we have to the real need for us to build out significantly more capabilities for our warehouse and our fulfillment side. Build-A-Bear, although the creation of the product and going through the experience is one of the ways you create the affinity to the brand, people still want to buy bears online. And a lot of that has to do with some of our collectible product, whether that's Scooby-Doo or Stitch, Disney Stitch, people love these products. These are actually adults buying for themselves. And we're also building out our giftable business. We launched some T-shirts that were a little bit about, sending hugs and making people happy. And again, people understood that Build-A-Bear can be the communicator to someone, or be there with someone, or give someone a physical hug. And I think that will be.
That's right. And are there any other types of projects that have been accelerated that you can point to that you're working on? Some really big, exciting projects from your vantage point?
As it relates to the warehouse, we kicked off a brand new project called the Big River Project. There is some allusion there to someone that does fulfillment well, and we expect to, in a way that we've never had before, kind of turn the whole warehouse pick, pack, fulfillment on its head and put it back together, and expect to come out of that with a whole new approach, which will be inclusive of using our 300 odd stores as warehouses and using our labor out in the stores. A lot can expand and extend our reach, as well as our how close we are to market when we ship something. So there's a lot of positive opportunities coming out of that approach. And then we're also looking at and have been working on a more virtual experience for Build-A-Bear, and this has highlighted that particular project as something that probably needs to be shifted up on the priorities list.
Well, I can't think of any more dynamic leader than yourself to help guide this incredible company to that next level throughout this time of change, and on some levels a time of opportunity to rethink and to be the best that you can possibly be. And go back to your leadership, because it's incredible, and the types of leadership, quite frankly, Sharon, that will be necessary to help achieve the global goals by 2030. So again, we're looking at this timeline, 3,500 odd some days to 2030. Here's Build-A-Bear. You're playing a key role in helping to drive innovation and some technology components to that are profound. You mentioned virtual reality being one of those. I think it's unbelievable what you're doing. And you look at this as an area where, what do you believe is a key factor that can help us get to and achieve the global goals by 2030?
You know, one of the things, it's such an interesting question, George. Thank you. That it's a mindset as much as it is you know, a specific list of activities.
Mm-hmm.
First, your insight on us as a global community being affected and impacted by exactly the same time is, and I'm hopeful that this is an accentuation point and an acceleration point for us as a global community to realize that we make it together or we don't make it, and that it we can find ways to move forward. And it won't be the first time in the world that it took, or in history, that it took a common enemy to bring disparate groups together. In this particular case, our common enemy is a pandemic. So I'm hopeful. I am very hopeful that this mends some of the divides and some of the challenges that we've had in being able to move forward on some of these global goals that have been identified. I also believe that the technology piece and the acceleration of that can enable much of what needs to be done. I would not, even though it seems like it's not that far away, when we as a race come together and bring our best minds and technology all together, it's extraordinary how quickly we can create change. I think the last thing, and this is true for companies and people at this point, we have to make sure that we're not using our time, energy, effort, and heart to attempt to recreate what was. The world will be different. This will be a moment, I believe, where it's a marker in time. And, you know, I've lived through a few generational markers in time where everyone knows where you were on this day when such and such happened, and nothing was the same after that moment in time. And I believe that this situation will be one of those markers in time. It becomes critical to lean into what will be the new. And people are calling that the new normal. I don't care to call it, but we have to use that time, energy, effort, and heart to evolve ourselves, our thinking, our companies, whatever it is that we're touching, to be as amenable is with the lowest level, but as opportunistic in this new world. And I'm very focused on, from a corporate perspective, of making sure that we realize that our job when we all come back together is to not to try to put all the pieces back together to recreate exactly what we were doing. That we need to put new pieces together and see new opportunities and ground and bring creativity and innovation and flexibility to what will be a new future. And it's a future that could possibly be much, much better than what we had previously thought.
That's right, Sharon. And my gosh, you know, what incredible insights, and certainly what incredible perspectives you're highlighting here. And you mentioned innovation. You mentioned innovation. How are you helping to foster innovation at Build-A-Bear?
Innovation has been something that's very close to dear to our hearts. We innovate on the product lines all the time. We certainly innovate in our stores and creative marketing. Yeah, I mean, for good, bad, or indifferent. Sometimes I'm careful in bringing this up, but Pay Your Age Day was a pretty innovative program that drove out, created 3 billion impressions and hundreds of thousands of people coming to our locations in a single day. And I know we disappointed some folks that day, but I have to give credit to the marketing team for a very innovative concept and idea. Our birthday programs are very innovative. Our entire approach is very innovative. We tend to try a process of turning things on its head, finding the edge. Where's the white space? Even believing, for example, that Build-A-Bear does not have to just be for children. We've driven our sales for 12 plus and 14 plus consumers to be over 25% of our total business by looking at this in an innovative way. And recognizing that we have opportunities beyond the status quo. I give the team credit on recognizing that we don't have to just be in malls, that we can partner with people like Carnival Cruise Lines, which, by the way, is very challenged right now, but I believe very strongly in their future, and some innovative places that Build-A-Bear can create that memory, and combining and partnering where with tourist locations where that heightened memory making moment makes Build-A-Bear that much more poignant. So I believe that we have a lot of opportunity in front of us. And as you know, we even have Build-A-Bear Radio, which has been a great innovation for us as well, a great communication point for us. And it's in partnership with iHeartRadio. During the pandemic, we also launched something called Workshop Wednesdays, which was just all about being of service to our guests and our fans, packed full of songs and entertainment and creative ideas and do-it-yourself concepts, just to be there for people.
Incredible. It's another component of leadership that you just highlighted. And I wanted to zero in on another area, which is cross-sector collaboration. I know there are many, but what is one example of that cross-sector piece that you have created that can serve as a model for organizations?
We've reached out, as I noted, to a number of would be considered tourist partners, and have started to create great relationships, whether it's Carnival Cruise Line or Great Wolf Lodge. And we've also partnered with Walmart, which, in some cases you would say it's a retailer partnering with a retailer. Walmart is an incredible partner for us. We run our stores inside of 22 different Walmarts. It's a symbiotic in many ways. They really want to create, a more engaging experience, and we feel like that the consistency of the traffic at Walmart is of a benefit to Build-A-Bear. It's a slightly different process, but it delivers all the same steps that you would have at any Build-A-Bear, and we're looking forward to continuing those types of what would have been considered in the past very odd, almost certainly different types of relationships.
Yeah, and that is another example of your foresight in terms of looking around the corner as a leader. I think it's important for every leader to do that, but I think what you demonstrate is exactly that talent, to be able to see around those corners, to be able to prepare for the unexpected, which obviously now we have encountered. And having these relationships and these partnerships is, and you've talked about this. So pre-pandemic, you were talking about the importance of partnerships, the importance of cross-sector collaboration, the importance of leadership, the importance of empathy, and all of the other elements that you feel are really important in terms of all leaders encompassing and sort of embracing that type of leadership style. Because you know what? When you don't have those partnerships in place and you hit a road bump, whatever it is, you have no idea what the capacity is of others to work together. Like you mentioned several organizations like the cruise industry. You mentioned Walmart. So retail, your retail, you help with retail products. You're partnering with other retailers. You're partnering with what would be an unlikely partner, which is a cruise line, right? In my opinion, that's sort of a cross-sector partnership. It's the exact definition of what we're talking about. And unlike, anything else, if you have these relationships as a CEO, I believe partnerships is part of your job description. And you've embraced it and you've led on that issue on so many different levels. So when the pandemic hit, you were able to pick up the phone, I imagine, and call all sorts of people, from suppliers to retailers to even competitors, perhaps, to talk about ways to collaborate, because you understood who they were, they knew you, you knew them. And that's the essence of leadership that I think is so fundamental. Now, shifting a bit, how do you see technology and innovation playing a role in helping to achieve those global goals that we've talked about so much by 2030?
Yeah. Well, first, I did want to go back and revisit your question on innovation, about how we drive innovation, because it may be some insights on, our thinking on how we create innovation, even as we drive toward those goals.
Sure.
I think one of the things that we do at Build-A-Bear, and one of the things that I try to encourage is, you're right. Look, we all are trying to look around corners, and sometimes we just get it wrong. You have to have that latitude to allow people to bring these, interesting ideas to the table. And you have to give people that permission to occasionally not be right. And you take that calculated risk, and if we were all on board and it was strategic within the framework, it was just a tactic that didn't work out, then we all move on. You say, what did we learn? Let's stop quickly and let's move on. And if you don't create that type of environment, people will stop bringing you new ideas.
That's right.
By definition, right?
That's right.
So that has to be woven into the fabric of your organization for you to get the innovative ideas to bubble from the middle and the bottom.
That's right.
They have to know that if they're wrong, it's going to be okay. And you have to create mechanisms to have a balance and decision tree that minimizes the risk associated with those decisions. So I just did want to mention that, and I think that some of the ideas that may allow us to start to get closer to the achievement of these goals may be associated with things we haven't thought of yet, with things that make them out of people's people's backgrounds and ideas and concepts that heretofore may have been uncomfortable saying the crazy thing that is the answer.
Right. Well,
and we have to be willing to do that. And you can get the crowdsourcing of concepts like that is enabled by technology. That's how it's linking all of that together. But there's no limit to where ideas can come from today because of technology.
That's, it's mind-boggling to think of that, but it's true. It's limitless today, and being able to come up with these out-of-the-box concepts in a time like this, to your point, we're able to do that because there's a new script being written, and like you alluded to earlier, it's either you can go back to being what you were and what you were doing, or you have an incredible opportunity to reinvent, to recreate, to rewrite the script. And that's what you're talking about. It's really,
yes,
it's really incredibly inspiring. And I always joke with my wife even about, they say you should do this. Yeah. And you sometimes wonder, and we joke, who are they? So yeah. Who are the they?
I don't know who they are. I've never met them.
Because it's been done a certain way for so long. And that's just what they say you should do. But sometimes, the they, even though it's a nebulous term, didn't have it right to begin with. So maybe it is a time as an inflection point, and I really like what you said about inflection and acceleration, to be able to rewrite that script. And so a perfect segue to, Sharon, what are 3 key insights that our global audience can share, that you can share with our global audience, that have helped you throughout your entire career?
Well, one dovetails into that particular concept. It's and my leadership team will know this question. I ask it all the time. Someone brings up an innovative idea. Usually, well, one, you have to be okay with a little bit of conflict in your leadership team, as long as there's rules around the conflict, mutual respect, fact-based arguments, things like that. My question usually after it gets batted around a little bit is, what's the worst thing that could happen? What's the worst thing that can happen if we try this innovative idea? That's that idea about, you do have this way to mitigate risk, and you calculate it, and you do the financials, and you run models and this, that, and the other. But sometimes that first instinct on what is the worst thing that can happen if we just flip that switch, or change this thing, or took out that process, or stopped printing that report, what's the worst thing that could happen?
Right.
And so if you kind of, it's usually not that bad. And so you work your way through that, and you end up making some choices that help simplify and and help make the business less complex. And a lot of times we just do things as a leadership team like that, and we don't even say anything, and no one will say, we'll see if somebody says that we stopped doing that. And it just made the business a lot less complex to do. So,
that's right. That's right.
So that's one. And I, that not only in the smallest decisions, but in some of the largest decisions that I've made in my career. Moving to New York early in my career was what's the worst thing that can happen? Well, I fail miserably, so I fail miserably. What's the worst thing that can happen? Well, I pack up and I move home. Yeah. Well, that's not so bad. Yeah. It's like I'm right back where I was. So let's go, and it didn't work out that way. I was successful and ended up going to Columbia and having a really fun career. So it's, sometimes you create, I guess the net is, sometimes you create a vast array of complicated, scary reasons why not.
Right. Exactly.
And most of the time, all of those why nots are not scary at all. And all you really needed was the one great big reason why. At least clear the plate to see the reason why for a moment.
Sharon, I never cease to be inspired and just simply amazed, again, by your leadership and by your profound sense of action. I mean, you're making things happen, you're accelerating change, and you're leading with empathy and with effectiveness. And that is remarkable. We've reached the point in the interview where I'd like to ask you, if you were to ask our global audience right now, what would you ask them to do? What would be your ask of them as we continue to change the world?
I believe that the fundamental aspect of being human is to maintain a sense of hope and a sense that it will get better. And it's our job to do that. And it is our dilemma to do that. But the alternative is not pleasant. And it's a much better way to live, is to believe in the future and believe that the future will be brighter than the past. And I certainly encourage us to do that. I also would want to assure that we recognize this as a set of values, and that we use these values, and I'm not talking about things that are associated with a specific set of beliefs per se, but core human values as guiding principles. And when we have these guiding principles, the decisions in the tough times and the decisions in the easy times are just simpler. And if we can decomplicate our lives by having these guiding principles and values, sometimes the answers are just not as hard as we think they are.
Sharon Price John, leadership, inspiring. Thank you so much for your incredible insights and for your uplifting, forward-leaning conversation with me today here on Idea Gen TV. We can't thank you enough. And I know our global audience will take away so many lessons as they help to lead their organizations in their communities, towns, and countries across the planet. Sharon Price John, CEO, Build-A-Bear. How can folks find out more about your work at Build-A-Bear?
You can always visit us at buildabear.com.
Get
yourself a furry friend.
Buildabear.com. It's a great time to go online to buildabear.com. And
everyone needs a fuzzy hug these days.
That's right. That's a perfect note to end this incredible interview on. Sharon Price John, CEO, Build-A-Bear. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, George. It's a pleasure.